This happened almost 8 years ago. I was in my early 30s, looking to escape the stress of teaching and reconnect with friends I hadn't seen in ages. Camping in the woods where I grew up sounded comforting. I thought I'd be fine. I'd camped before on summer vacations as a child, and it felt like a return to simpler times. As the sun set, we set up our campsite. The tall pines surrounded us, and the woods were quiet. The cicadas buzzed in the background. We sat around the flickering campfire, its glow dancing on our faces. I felt relaxed, as if the burdens of work had lifted away. We laughed and told stories. As the night deepened, the atmosphere shifted. That's when we started sharing ghost stories. Someone mentioned a local legend about a strange figure lurking in the woods. Around midnight, we were still laughing when I saw something move at the edge of the trees. I caught a flash of white, and my heart skipped a beat. It was quick, and I thought maybe I imagined it. I told myself I was just spooked by the stories. I shrugged it off and kept listening to my friends. Still, a jittery vibe settled in my stomach. The next day, as we packed up to head home, the nostalgic warmth of the trip began to fade. It wasn't long before weird things started happening. I came home to find my keys missing. My living room lights flickered. I tried to ignore the feeling of being watched while I moved around my house. Maybe it was my imagination playing tricks. Weeks passed. I talked to my friends. Some mentioned having strange dreams. They described feelings of dread and something lurking in the shadows. A chill ran down my spine. Our stories had stirred something, maybe something that followed us home. After that, I started losing sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night and every creak in the house made my heart race. I began locking my windows at night, even if they were already locked. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Maybe I'd seen a shape pass by the window once or twice, but every time I turned to look, nothing was there, just shadows. Then one night I was sitting on my couch. I clearly saw someone standing outside, just staring at me. I thought maybe it was my imagination again, but then it turned and walked away, fading into the trees. I don't know what it was, but I could feel it watching me. It felt wrong. I couldn't tell if the thing was in my mind or in the woods. Each night I felt more uneasy. My friends and I talked about the camping trip, replayed the stories, and it felt like something was coming for us. What if we brought something back with us? What if we were still being hunted by our own stories? Each night I lay awake, trapped in my own thoughts, and I waited for the next creak or shadow. I wasn't sure how long I could keep living like this. The following week I decided I needed answers. I reached out to my friends, hoping they had insights to share.
As we all gathered at a coffee shop, the unease still hung over us like a fog. We spoke in low voices, careful not to attract attention. I realized it wasn't just me who felt haunted. We all carried that weight. Sarah, one of the friends from the trip, pulled out her phone. "I did some digging," she said, her brow furrowing. "You remember the stories about that old woman the locals talked about? The one who went missing in these woods?" I nodded. I had almost forgotten her name, but her story always sent chills down my spine. It made sense considering our childish campfire lore. "Well, there are theories," she continued, "that her spirit lingers, and it's said she's drawn to—" "Death," Dave interrupted. "That's what people say. If you bring the dark stories to life, it attracts her." The words sent a shiver down my spine. I remembered the figure I'd seen, and now I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had happened in the woods wasn't done with us yet. "Has anyone else seen anything strange?" I asked, my heart racing at the possibility. They exchanged uneasy glances. "Sometimes I wake up and think someone's in my room," Sarah confessed, looking down at her coffee as if it contained the answers. "I swear I heard whispering last night," Dave added, his voice lower now, like right outside my bedroom window. More stories poured out, and I started to feel trapped in a loop of our fears. I thought we were being ridiculous, yet a part of me sensed the truth behind our words. The woods had taken something from us, and now that something was back for more. We made a pact to check in with each other, to face whatever this was together. I felt a sense of relief. I was no longer alone in this. Then the mood shifted. As I sipped my coffee, something caught my eye through the window. I turned, and my heart dropped. A figure stood across the street, watching us. The sun was setting, and the shadows played tricks, but I could make out a white dress fluttering in the wind. "Do you see her?" My voice trembled as I leaned forward. "What?" Sarah asked, but when she looked, I glanced back. The figure was gone. "Nothing," I muttered, my fingers clammy around my cup. I wasn't ready to share my fear. Not yet. When we finally parted ways that night, unease settled over me like a shroud. I returned home, locking every door and window, my heart racing. I settled into bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept imagining that figure, wondering if she had been watching us at the cafe. Then, just before dawn, I heard it again, whispering outside my window. Cool fear gripped me as I crept toward the sound. I peered through the curtains. That's when I saw it, a flash of white, just like before, moving through the trees. But this time I was certain I wasn't imagining it, and whatever it was, it didn't seem far away. I took a deep breath, adrenaline coursing
knew I had to confront this fear, and it had to be soon.
I spent the day trying to shake the visions from my mind. I forced myself to go through the motions of life, but I barely listened to my coworkers and couldn't focus on anything. All I could think about was that figure, cloaked in white, and the anxiety creeping back into my chest. Around noon, I couldn't take it anymore. I texted Sarah, suggesting we go back to the woods that weekend. My heart raced at the thought, but I felt drawn to confront the unknown. I hoped maybe we'd find answers, or at least some clarity. Later that afternoon, she replied, "I'm in. Let's bring flashlights and some snacks. Maybe we can make a campfire?" I smiled a little. The idea of a campfire felt nostalgic, like we could reclaim the innocence of our childhood. But the memories of fear mixed with excitement. I had to hope this would end it. That evening, Dave showed up at my house, his eyes wide and shadowed. "I didn't want to wait for the weekend," he said, his voice tight. "I think we should go now. I can't shake this feeling." His urgency sent a thrill through me. What if something is there? I knew I shouldn't be encouraging his impulsive ideas, but part of me wanted to see, to face whatever might be lurking. "The sooner we act, the sooner we'll know," he pressed. After a brief internal debate, I agreed. We gathered some supplies, flashlights, my old camping gear, and a few warm jackets, and set out into the night. The woods loomed like a dark sea around us, swallowing our voices as we drove. A chill ran down my spine as we parked the car. Once we stepped onto the cracked path, the trees seemed to lean in, cloaked in shadows. I tried to ignore the disquiet settling into my bones. I flicked on my flashlight, cutting through the darkness ahead. The beam danced across tree trunks and brush, landing momentarily on a broken branch, or what I hoped was just the wind. "Let's set up near the spot where we camped before," I suggested. Dave nodded, though he glanced nervously around. We reached the clearing, and I felt a shift in the air. The unease wrapped around us tightly, making it hard to breathe. We unpacked our gear and rummaged through snacks while I tried to lighten the mood. "Let's tell some campfire ghost stories," I said, trying to laugh. My voice wavered more than I wanted it to. "I'd rather not," Dave responded, glancing toward the tree line. "What if the stories attract her?" "Come on, we need to confront this." I knew I was trying to convince myself as much as him. He finally relented, sharing an old campfire story that we had laughed about years ago. As the tale unfolded, the light from the fire flickered, casting eerie shadows. I couldn't help but feel we were awakening something by speaking the words. Then, as he finished, the wind picked up. I heard it, a faint whisper, carried by the breeze, though I couldn't make out any words. It felt like an echo, a memory rising up to remind us we weren't alone. "Did you hear that?"
I turned to Dave, who looked pale. "I thought it was just the trees," he stammered, but I could see fear creeping into his eyes. And then, just like that, it happened. The shadows shifted. A flash of white darted between the trees, barely visible. My heart raced. I couldn't tell if it was a figment of my imagination or if she was really there, watching us. "Did you see it?" I gasped, and before he could answer, everything around us suddenly went dark. The fire flickered, and I felt the weight of silence press in like a vice. I blinked, trying to adjust to the sudden darkness. The sound of crackling fire faded, replaced by a heavy silence hanging in the air. Panic surged in my chest as I fumbled for my flashlight. My hand trembled, and the beam finally sputtered to life. "Dave!" I shouted, but my voice felt swallowed by the woods. I swung my flashlight in a frantic arc, illuminating the clearing. He stood frozen, his eyes wide and reflecting the light. "What just happened?" he whispered, his voice strained. "I don't know," I replied, my own fear echoing in my voice. It felt like something had shifted, like the very air was charged with anticipation. Just as I was about to suggest we pack up and leave, I heard it again, a soft whisper, so close yet indistinguishable. It sent a chill racing down my spine. I turned my flashlight toward the trees at the edge of the clearing. The shadows felt like they were breathing, shifting in a way that wasn't just the wind. "We should go back to the car," I said, my heart pounding against my ribs. Dave nodded, but he didn't move. His gaze was locked onto something. "Look!" I followed his stare, and the flashlight beam landed on a figure standing between the trees. My heart dropped. The pale white figure from my vision stood there, impossibly still. "Is that—" I couldn't finish the question. My voice was caught in my throat. "I can't breathe," Dave whispered, his face paling even more. And then, as if answering his silent plea, the figure stepped forward into the light, revealing long, tangled hair and a face obscured by shadows. My heart raced, and I instinctively stepped back. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out.
The figure tilted its head, and I could swear it was studying us, waiting. I felt a cold dread seep into my bones. "We need to get out of here," Dave said urgently, grabbing my arm. I didn't argue. We turned to run, but I halted as something caught my eye. There, where we had set up the fire, I noticed a small object glinting in the moonlight, the silver locket I had lost on our last trip here, 8 years ago. The same trip where we told ghost stories, the same trip where everything changed. "Wait," I said, pulling away from Dave. I knelt to pick it up, feeling the cold metal against my fingertips. "Are you crazy? We need to go." But my heart was pounding for a different reason now. Why was the locket here? It had felt lost forever, like so many memories from that night.
I squeezed it tightly in my hand, caught in a whirlpool of nostalgia and fear. Then the wind swirled around us, more forceful this time, carrying another whisper, clearer now. "Find her." It was a voice I recognized but couldn't place. "Let's go," Dave yelled, pulling me back toward the path. As we sprinted away from that haunting clearing, my mind swirled with questions. What did it mean? What was following us? I glanced back one last time, only to see the figure retreat into the darkness, almost as if it had finally gotten what it wanted. That night was only the beginning. I knew it would haunt us, and that voice lingered, echoing in my thoughts, even as the silhouette faded into the trees. The next day, everything felt different. The sun poured into my room, bright and inviting, but my stomach churned. I thought about what happened the night before. I could still see the figure in my mind, the whispers clawing at my thoughts. I called Dave. "We need to talk," I said when he answered, trying to keep my voice steady. He hesitated. "About last night?" "Yeah, can we meet?" "Sure, let's go to the diner." When we sat down in the booth, I watched him fidget with his coffee cup. "I couldn't sleep," he admitted, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "I keep hearing that voice." "Me too," I confessed. It was so familiar, like someone from our past. I thought it sounded like Claire. His eyes drifted down, and I felt a knot in my chest. Claire, the friend we lost, the memory that haunted us every year when we came back to this place. I hadn't thought about her in a while, not since the last camping trip. We had laughed and shared stories around the fire that night before everything fell apart. "Do you think it's connected?" I asked quietly. Dave looked up, determination creeping into his expression. "We can't ignore it. We have to find out what it wants." I was hesitant. "And what if it means us harm? Maybe it's better to just let it go." "Is that what you really want? To just forget?" he challenged, and I felt anger mixed with my fear. "No, but I didn't have a good answer." The locket spun in my pocket, a constant reminder of that night. I pulled it out, placing it on the table. It seemed heavier than I remembered. I could hear the whispers again, echoing. "Find her." "Do you think she's still out there?" I asked, half hopeful, half afraid. "I don't know, but if anything is going to set it free, we have to try." The decision felt like a weight pressing down on me. I nodded. "Okay, let's go back." Once we arrived at the campsite, it was eerily quiet. All the sights that had once brought comfort now felt ominous. The trees loomed higher, shadows dancing where they didn't belong. We approached the clearing, squinting into the thick woods. My mind replayed the events of last night, the figure, the whispers, the feeling of being watched. "Where do we start?" Dave asked, cutting through the silence. I looked around, searching for something, anything that might guide us. That's when I saw it. Just beyond the clearing, a faint glow flickered, like a lost ember begging to be found. "Over there!" I pointed, my heart racing again. But before we could move, the air shifted. A powerful presence filled the clearing, sending shivers down my spine. The warm whisper enveloped us once again, now urgent in its plea. "Find her, find her." We exchanged a glance. "What do we do?" Dave whispered, panic creeping into his tone. "Follow it," I said, my resolve hardening. If we were going to face whatever this was, we had to know the truth. We stepped forward together, feet trembling with each stride. Whatever waited in the shadows was closer than we realized. As we moved closer to the flickering light, I could see that it pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. The whispering intensified, wrapping around us like thick fog. "Find her," it begged again, but this time it felt more desperate. Dave gripped my wrist, his face pale. "What if this is some kind of trick?" His voice wavered, barely above a whisper. I didn't have an answer. Deep down I shared his fear.
Maybe it's her, I said, trying to sound brave. Maybe she needs our help. We crossed the threshold into the underbrush, the trees twisting overhead, casting ghostly shadows. As the glow brightened, revealing a small clearing, I noticed something on the ground, something shiny, half buried in the leaves. My heart skipped. It was a bracelet. Claire's, I breathed, recognizing it instantly. The silver charm glimmered in the faint light. I knelt down, my stomach churning as I picked it up. The very same bracelet she wore the last time we saw her, the last time she was truly with us. I don't like this, Dave said, his voice tight. What if that's all that's left of her? At that moment, the whispers crescendoed. Find her. The wind picked up, and I felt a chill prickling the back of my neck. It was no longer just a voice. It felt like a presence, an entity pressing down on us, urging us forward. We can't stop now, I insisted, glancing back at the path we had come from. In that moment, the light shifted. It grew brighter, like a lantern in a storm, illuminating the trees around us. And then, a figure stepped into the glow. My breath caught in my throat. It was a girl. Claire, I called out hesitantly, my heart racing. She looked the same, yet different, as if time held her in a stasis between rhythms. Her face was soft, but there was a depth in her eyes that I struggled to understand. You found me, she said, her voice echoing with that same urgency I had heard before. We've been looking for you, I stammered, stepping closer. I didn't want to be found, she replied, and the air crackled with tension. But you have to let me go. They won't stop until you do. What do you mean? Dave asked, and I saw the fear spread across his face.
Quickly, Claire urged, her expression shifting to one of alarm. They're coming. Before I could react, the ground trembled beneath our feet. The whispers grew louder, turning into a cacophony that drowned out my thoughts. Shadows emerged, curling around the trees and stretching toward us, as if reaching out for something hidden. We have to run, I shouted, turning to grab Dave, but the shadows were already closing in. I could feel a force pulling me backward, stronger than anything I had experienced before. What if it takes her again? He cried, his voice laced with panic. Then we'll fight, I yelled back, adrenaline surging through me. In that moment, my fear solidified into a single thought. I couldn't let it end like this. As I pulled him, the light flickered once more, leaving a path ahead of us. This way, I shouted, realizing we had no other option. We dashed into the trees, the whispers now a chaotic storm around us. But with every step, I felt Claire's presence guiding us, and I knew we had to make it out. The shadows lurked close behind, and all I could hope for was that Claire's spirit was leading us to safety. But as we ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were racing against something far darker than we could understand. We ran through the trees, branches clawing at our clothes and skin as if they wanted us to stay. The shadows whispered behind us, their voices mingling with the chaos in my mind. Each step felt like a battle against a weight I couldn't explain. I glanced over my shoulder, but saw only darkness, creeping closer, making my heart race even faster. Keep moving, Claire's echo sounded louder now, almost a command. It was strange. Even though she was guiding us, the urgency in her voice felt like a warning. I couldn't shake the anxiety building in my chest. This is insane, Dave shouted as he stumbled on a root, nearly falling. I grabbed his arm to steady him, our eyes locking for a brief second, filled with panic. What do we do if they catch us? I had no answer for him. I didn't want to think about what that might mean. Just trust Claire, I yelled. We have to follow her. Have to, or want to. His question hung in the air, heavy and accusing. I didn't want to think about it, but thoughts rushed in anyway. What if Claire wasn't the same? What if she had become part of this darkness? I shook my head, trying to clear my mind. Let's go. Suddenly, the whispers turned to laughter, sharp and cold, echoing from all around us. It felt like they were playing with us, drawing us in so they could pounce. I tightened my grip on the bracelet in my pocket, hoping it would keep me anchored. I had to believe Claire needed us. I had to believe that love would prevail over whatever this was. We broke into the next clearing, and I stopped short. The light from Claire flickered again, illuminating something in the center. My heart sank.
It was a large, twisted tree, its bark black and gnarled, glowing faintly with the same unnatural light. Beneath it lay a circle of bones, small and large, human and animal alike. Dave froze beside me. "What the hell is this?" he gasped. I stepped closer, my stomach churning. I recognized some of the charms that hung around the bones. They were like those Claire used to collect at camp. Memories of her laughter and light-hearted stories surfaced, now marred by this gruesome sight. "Claire?" I called, but the voice that came back wasn't hers. It was deeper, almost mocking. "You chose to come here. The light always draws the lost. "No," I whispered, backing away. "This can't be real." Dave tugged at my arm. "We need to go, now." Before I could respond, a gust of wind hit us, blowing the leaves into frantic spirals. I turned to Dave, but he pointed behind us. Emerging from the shadows were figures, wretched shapes writhing, their faces obscured. "Run!" I screamed. We darted back into the trees. The ghosts of those who had been drawn here stomped after us, their footfalls heavy on the ground. Desperate, I looked back at that twisted tree. "What do you want from us?" I shouted at whatever lurked behind it. The voice that answered was softer now, like a whisper against my ear. "You didn't even ask the question." "Question? What question?" But I already knew, didn't I? And then I understood. In my heart I felt a tug, something that bound me to Claire, a connection deeper than anything I'd known, as if she was calling for me, beckoning me back. "That's when I saw it," I gasped, realizing it wasn't just Claire's guiding light, but something bigger, something that could consume us whole. I had to break the bond, but how? We sprinted deeper into the forest, the pounding in my chest matching the rhythm of our panicked footsteps. The laughter faded, but the shadows were relentless, creeping in, barely visible, yet prickling at the edges of my vision. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. "Why is this happening?" Dave wheezed, glancing back nervously. "What did we do to deserve this?" I didn't know how to answer. I forced myself to focus on the trees ahead, trying to ground myself in the reality of the situation. But even as I told myself we could outrun this, I could feel that whisper curling around me, urging me to surrender. "We need to keep moving," I said, my voice shaky but firm. "There has to be a way out." A flicker of movement caught my eye. "Wait," I said, stopping abruptly, my breath catching. Dave nearly tripped into me. "What's that?" Between two trees, a figure stood still, half hidden by the shadows. I squinted, searching its features. In the pale light, I saw it was Claire. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by confusion. "Claire," I called, but she didn't move, her gaze fixed on something deeper in the forest. "Don't! It's a trap!" Dave shouted, pulling me back. "I need to know!"
I insisted, stepping toward her, each heartbeat echoing my conflicted sense of safety and dread. But just as I reached out, Claire turned to face us, her expression void of emotion. The light dimmed, and a cold breeze swept through, twisting around me like icy fingers. "Stay away from her," came the deep voice again. It reverberated through the trees, making my skin crawl. "You know she's lost." Before I could process the words, something shifted behind Claire. Shadows morphed into grotesque shapes, writhing and stretching, becoming more pronounced. The air crackled with tension. "Claire, come with us," I shouted, my heart racing as I realized the truth. I wasn't sure if the Claire we knew was still there. All that stood before us was a shell, a beacon of darkness. "I can't," she said, in a tone that made my blood run cold. "You have to choose." "Choose what?" I yelled, panic rising like bile in my throat. I stepped closer, abandoning the safety of distance. "We don't want to leave you, please." In a heartbeat, her face contorted into a smile that felt wrong. The shadows behind her thickened, swirling like a storm ready to strike. "You were drawn here, just like the rest. You can join us, or you can run." At that moment, the bond I thought connected us became a chain, weighing me down, rendering me powerless. I fumbled for the bracelet in my pocket, gripping it tightly. "No, this isn't her," I cried, desperation creeping into my voice. "No," Dave shouted, pulling me back as the shadows surged forward. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down. There was no more time to wonder if I could break the bond. If I wanted Claire, the real Claire, I had to break the illusion. Suddenly, out of the darkness, a figure lunged at us. I barely had time to react. Then everything went black. I jolted awake, gasping for air. I was on the forest floor, disoriented. Where was Claire? Where was Dave? I pushed myself up, scanning frantically. The only thing I heard was my own heartbeat, pounding a warning in the silence. An unsettling realization washed over me as I stood there alone. Something had followed us out. I stood still, trying to steady my breathing. The forest looked different now. The familiar trail seemed tangled and unfamiliar. Shadows stretched long, casting eerie shapes on the ground. "Dave?" I called, my voice trembling in the hollow silence. No response. A chill crept up my spine as I scanned the area. My hands fumbled in my pockets for my phone. No signal.
The panic wasn't just in my chest, it was a looming presence, clawing at the edges of my mind. I had to find Dave. I couldn't be alone, not here. I turned back the way we'd come, hesitant. The laughter that had echoed through the trees not long ago felt like a distant memory. Now every rustle in the underbrush sounded like a whisper, beckoning me to step deeper into the darkness. I stumbled forward, focusing on the ground to avoid the roots and branches lurking in my path.
My heart raced as I thought of Claire, the way she'd looked, lost and yet not lost. What had I seen in her eyes? "Claire!" I shouted again, voice breaking. The only answer was the wind, rustling the leaves, carrying away my words. Then I heard it, a rustling behind me. I whirled around, breath hitching in my throat. "Dave?" I called, more softly this time. Silence again. Regaining my composure, I took a cautious step back, every instinct screaming at me to run. But I needed to find him. I felt the weight of the bracelet in my pocket, a familiar anchor in an unfamiliar landscape. I touched it, willing it to give me strength. As I moved forward again, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I froze. Something darted between the trees, quick, low to the ground. My heart raced. It could be Dave, or worse, whatever had followed us out. "Dave, is that you?" I called, unsure if making noise was wise or foolish. The rustling stopped, and for a moment the world felt still. Then I saw it clearly, a figure crouched low, watching me. My breath caught as fear gripped my chest. It wasn't Dave. With glowing eyes, it stared back, an unfathomable darkness gazing through the branches. I took a step back, not wanting to provoke whatever this was. "I'm not here to hurt you," I managed to say, though my voice sounded small in the vastness of the trees. The figure remained still, but I could sense a hunger in its gaze. And then it moved, slinking further behind the trees, beckoning but never revealing itself fully. Something deep inside me told me to follow it. Maybe it would lead me to Dave, or maybe it was another trap. I hesitated. That's when I noticed something on the ground, pieces of a torn-up jacket. It was unmistakably red. "Dave!" My heart pounded louder. I rushed towards it without thinking. But before I could reach it, the figure reappeared, much closer now. The distance closed between us, and I felt the air thicken. I looked deep across its featureless face and realized it wasn't just watching, it was waiting. My hand went to my bracelet, gripping it tightly again. If there was a choice to be made, I needed to be strong. I couldn't let whoever or whatever was lingering in the woods take me too. Just when I thought I could stand my ground, a familiar voice shattered the silence. "Run!" It was Dave, breathless and frantic. I spun around, still clutching the bracelet. "Where are you?" I shouted, but all I heard was the rustle of trees, still shaking from the commotion. Something shifted again, the figure buzzing with energy. I was trapped between the two, and all I could do was decide if I would fight, run, or if running would even matter anymore. The forest was alive with chaos as I turned back toward the sound of Dave's voice. "I'm here," I screamed, heart racing in sync with the pounding footsteps echoing around me. "Where are you?" Panic swelled. Every instinct told me to flee, but I couldn't leave him behind. I had to find him.
Suddenly, without warning, the air thickened. The shadows twisted, stretching toward me like hungry hands. I stumbled back, my flashlight sputtering, its beam flickering like my resolve. From behind a cluster of trees, I finally saw Dave emerge, disheveled and gasping for breath. Relief watched over me. "There you are!" I shouted, rushing toward him. But as I drew close, I noticed a glint of something behind him. From the depths, a figure stepped forward, weaving through the trees with an unsettling grace, its shadow blending into the darkness. It was so similar to what I had seen before, the pale dress fluttering eerily in an invisible breeze, catching my heart in a vice grip. "Run!" Dave yelled again, voice strained. "It's not her! It's not Claire!" I hesitated, my heart torn. Was that truly Claire within the shadows, or had she become something else, something darker? I clutched the locket tightly in my hand, a talisman against this nightmare. With a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed Dave's arm. "This way," I called, pulling him as we sprinted deeper into the woods. Behind us, whispers rose, sharp and mocking, filling the air with dread. We stumbled over uneven ground, branches snagging at our clothes, but we didn't look back. The whispers escalated into a roar, a cacophony of voices that enveloped us, drowning out my thoughts. Suddenly, I spotted a break in the trees ahead. Moonlight spilled through, illuminating a path that promised escape. "Almost there," I urged, but as we neared the clearing, a cold wind gusted, forcing me to halt. I had lost my footing, and the ground beneath felt unstable, as if alive with a pulse. "Keep going," Dave shouted. He turned to look back, but I clutched his arm tighter, dragging him forward. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced into a form, a haunting visage that stopped us cold. "Why did you abandon me?" The voice echoed around us, a sorrowful wail laced with fury.
You must choose. I recoiled from the figure, my mind racing through memories of carefree laughter intertwined with the weight of loss. Claire, we're here. We didn't forget, I cried, desperate. But the figure didn't seem to hear. The ghostly presence edged closer as the ground vibrated beneath us. It reached out, bony fingers stretching toward Dave, who stood frozen in fear. I knew this could end one of two ways. We could succumb to the shadows or fight back against the oppressive weight of our past. I took a step forward and shouted, "What do you want from us? What do you need?" And in that moment of stillness, the atmosphere shifted. Behind me, a sliver of light flickered against the trees, the shimmering glow of the bracelet I clutched. I held it out, the connection built on memories and love, the unbreakable bond of friendship that once was. "Let her go," I shouted, my voice finding new strength. The figure recoiled, as if repelled by the light. For a heartbeat, the shadows hesitated.
I could feel wrongdoing woven through the air, the anger and grief of something unresolved. "What you lost cannot return, not like this," echoed the voice. "You must set her free." "She's lost. Claire is lost," Dave muttered, and I could see the fight drain from his eyes. I shook him gently. "No! If we let it take us, anything, it will never end." With a surge of desperation, I raised the bracelet higher, focusing on all the love and memories we shared with Claire. "We remember you. We still care." As if responding to my plea, the figure writhed, its form shimmering between shadow and light. For an instant, Claire's face faded in and out of focus. I clutched the bracelet and yelled, "You are not just shadows. You are part of us. We are not abandoning you." The whispers crescendoed, spiraling around us like a tornado, but my voice remained steady. "You're here because we're family. We will honor your memory, but not in darkness." I felt the energy surging through me, the power of our friendship, our history. And in that moment, something shifted. The shadows began to pull back, retreating into the depths of the woods, howling as their cries faded into the night. The figure stilled, the expression softening, and I could have sworn I caught a glimmer of gratitude in Claire's eyes. Then there was silence. As the shadows receded, the weight lifted from our hearts. I turned to see Dave, his horror transformed into something bordering on relief. We were still in the woods, but it felt different, lighter, as if dawn were breaking. Did we do it?" he asked, breathless. "I think so." My heart raced with questions that remained unanswered. What lingered in the shadows? What did we truly confront? But as we stepped back into the moonlight, twilight aura washing over us, I paused one last time. Behind the trees, in the flickering edges where light met dark, something shimmered, a hint of movement that felt like both a whisper of closure and a reminder of what could haunt us. "I don't know if we'll ever find out everything," I murmured, "but some questions might remain unanswered, even as we move forward." Dave nodded, and as we turned to leave the woods, a memory of laughter mingled with the shadows. I knew we'd carry the echoes of that night with us always, and though fear lingered like smoke, we were free, for now. It changed how I saw things, the woods, and my connection to Claire. I realized some darkness might never fully fade. It might just settle, waiting for attention or acknowledgement. As we navigated back toward the trail, I couldn't help but glance back at the tree line, a distant tremor of anticipation coursing through me. And I moved on with a heavy heart, hoping whatever lingered could find peace, yet knowing it might still be out there.